This channel is not for children, neither is it for the weak of heart or mind. Viewer discretion is advised. Any of you regular viewers of this channel might be aware of my ceaseless frustration with Neo or modern paganism and how it interprets the horn god archetype. One of the reasons the sect of the horn god was created was to bring about a rejuvenation of the archetype by revealing his many faces, because he is the ancient primal essence of the left-hand path. That's what I'm after, both historically and psychologically. I'm searching for that core truth of what this philosophy is all about. And even though the modern pagans don't want to admit it, there is a very real connection between the horn god and the sinister path, because gods such as Odin and Shiva have horn god roots. And in their raw form, these gods were not compassionate father figures. They've been around for a long, long time, and if the past was brutal, then that fact would have been reflected in their mythology. I've stated more than once how the foundation of any given society would reflect this fact. Foundation as in their religious or moral philosophies. Because that's what the predominant religion of any given society does. It establishes a deep cultural framework, whether we like it or not. So if you have a barbaric warrior culture, the myths and the gods that populate those myths are going to be ones not of compassion and empathy, but gods of brutality. Their archetypal motivation would be for the benefit of a specific people, and for a society to survive in a savage age, then brutality would be the norm. Thus, the dark gods would take center stage. But what about Rome, you may ask? Didn't they adopt Christianity as their official religion, and weren't they brutal? Yeah, and about 160 years after they established Christianity as their official religion, the Western Roman Empire was no more. But there were many reasons for their collapse. And one damn good reason was because they substituted a master morality for a slave morality. But I digress. What we know of the dark gods, in most cases here in the West, is opaque. For the myths and legends of the distant past have been coated with a veneer of Christianity. So it's somewhat hard to make out the details beneath the surface. An example of this Abrahamic abridgment would be the writings of 12th century Icelandic historian and poet Snorri Sturluson. First off, we should all be thankful to the guy for writing the prose Edda and the poetic Eddas, because if he hadn't, we would know very little of the Norse gods. But in those writings, he kinda turned the dark god Odin into a Norse Yahweh. This was because he was a Christian, and it was hard for him to view the gods any other way than by the good-bad duality. Even though Odin did some horrible things often directed at the other gods, in Snorri's eyes he had to be a good guy. He couldn't be the Allfather and have a shadow side. Look at the facts, my modern pagan friends. The gods have been sanitized. Myth has been made safe for your consumption. Disney-fied, if you will. The problem with the modern pagans is they believe the cartoon version of the gods is the original version. But I guess some people need to do this because the brutal reality of what the ancient gods are would make them weep. Well, this brings us back to the horn god. And if you're discussing the horn god with some glassy-eyed tree hugger, the goddess will come up, along with a blessed be. Besides representing the earth and also the moon, Neo-pagans see the goddess as the holiest of holies, while the horn god has been relegated to the position of her boy toy. This feminized cartoon version of the horn god coincides with their white light beliefs. But then again, some people are drawn to the ethereal, and if you're one of those and want to get lost in a great cosmic collective filled with unicorns, fluffy bunnies, and rainbows, then maybe this safe version of the horn god and the gods in general is the thing for you. Grab your tie-dyed moo-moo and bongos and join them. Those safe, happy gods are waiting to give you a big, fat, COVID-free hug. But it's bullshit. And why do I say it's bullshit? Because I know reality isn't pretty. Maybe the reason I don't buy into this nonsense is because I have an independent spirit and an affinity for what some may call the darker side of life, and would rather devour the herd than join it. So a more truthful, savage representation of the gods better suits me. And there are many examples of these gods out there, from Rudra to Vodnaz. And even though I may be drawn to the horn god, I can't ignore the goddess. In my eyes, she isn't some vapid blonde, though, spreading white light and rainbows. No. She's the Dark Mother. She's Kali Ma, the furious form of the goddess represented with what are arguably the most savage features of all the gods. Where Shiva is consciousness, Kali in the form of Shakti is energy, the dynamic aspect of transcendental reality. And in her furious form, Kali both creates and destroys, intoxicated with the paradox that death feeds on life and life feeds on death. You see, in the East, these ancient Indo-European gods were never coated with the veneer of the Abrahamic, even though there were attempts to do so. That's why I've incorporated the Eastern gods into my personal philosophy and that of the sect. Where here in the West the gods have been watered down, they're still full strength. I know in India they have silly TV versions of gods, but that doesn't take away from what they are culturally or philosophically. The people there know their true nature. In the end, what I want is to acknowledge the gods as they were meant to be, not what those who can't get over their Christian upbringing wishes they were. I want to experience them, because that's what you do. You don't worship the gods, you experience the gods, and you should experience them in their true nature, their true form, raw, bloody, and real.